right, guys. Good afternoon if you're in California. Good afternoon, I think. I think it's good morning if you're in Australia down under. And if you're in Europe, then you should probably be sleeping right now. Oh man, Labor Day weekend, US holiday. Anyways, BMX Coach Live, episode number 4. Welcome. I am your host, Greg Romero. And today, we're going to talk about how does changing your gear make you faster? Yeah, I get questions all the time. Gearing questions, crank length questions. Please forgive me, I got to eat a little bit of sugar here. Hope you guys are having a great weekend. I had a great weekend. Got a lot of exercises in. Been working on my endurance, working on my anaerobic endurance. All to stay in shape. All right, guys. Hey, listen, thank you so much for showing up. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here and serve you guys. Again, the whole point of BMX training and, of course, this YouTube channel, and, of course, our membership and everyone that I coach is to help you guys thrive, experience your potential, and to sustain it. And also, if you guys can, make sure you guys share this video anywhere and everywhere that you guys can. Because at the end of the day, my goal here is to help out as many younger riders, beginning riders, and parents of our sport that are new to our sport, as well as older riders that are new to our sport, beginners, intermediates, newly turned experts, and of course, if you're an expert and you're a seasoned vet, of course, I'm so happy to help you guys, and I help many of you guys. However, it feels like a lot of those guys I coach separately. From time to time, they'll check out the live stream. Anyways, the whole point is to help in an effort to help our sport grow, we have to help out our younger riders and parents of our younger riders. It's really beneficial. The whole reason why I created BMX training in the first place is because when I first got into the sport, there was hardly any information on preparation, anything physical, skill, emotional, mental, tactical, strategy, gears, what to do for training, what is it not, right? And how to, basically go through the progressions of BMX, because BMX is one big progression for all of us, right? From starting out, finding our BMX bike, finding a BMX track, going to the track. It's very intimidating. It's intimidating for a lot of us. And even more so when you're going from beginner to intermediate to expert to, the local, state, and then regional, and then national level. And some of you guys are experiencing the world championships for the first time. Some of you guys are aspiring junior elites, and of course, many of you guys are aspiring Olympians. And so I've been through all of that. I've seen it all. And man, I get it. It's not an easy road to navigate. And so I'm here for you guys. And again, the whole point of this show is to help you guys, get any questions answered by me. So feel free to ask questions in the comment section below. All right. Well, as you may know, these shows are fun. I don't do a whole lot of preparation, like last week I kind of came up with a topic and made a thumbnail, and, I think of different problems and questions that get asked frequently. And I'm like, you know what, that's what I'm going to talk about next week. And so majority of these shows I do extemporaneously. Extemporaneously means just off the cuff, no preparation. However, I did prepare a couple of diagrams, nothing crazy, right? Just some titles in regards to the pros and cons of changing your gear. So, you guys can screenshot that or go back and when the video does get published after we go live, you guys can go back and check it out. Hopefully you guys take lots of notes if you can, of course, a lot of mental notes. And if you guys are the writing type that kinesthetically need to write something down, then by all means do it. You know, when I coach my athletes, I do a lot of Zoom calls, right? We do Zoom calls, and most of my athletes, I don't have to ask them many times. You know, usually they show up with a notebook and a pen, and then they just start writing. You know, I'll say something, and sometimes I'm like, hey, check it out. Something comes to my mind. I'm like, all right, get your pen ready. You ready to write this down? And then I tell it to them, and it's always fun. But yeah, so if you guys have the opportunity to write some things down and you want to share what you learned, make sure you leave what you learned in the comments below. I really appreciate that, and perhaps that's going to help out somebody else. All right, so we got a couple of messages coming in. Devin Kelly says, hey, Coach, can I ask you a question? Absolutely, Devin. That's what I'm here for. You guys can ask as many questions as you can. However, I am getting off at 6:15 today, Labor Day weekend. I have some family that's local in town. They're visiting, and we're going to do a little bit of grilling out back. And so they've already started the meal prep, and I'm going to come in and probably check the temperature of the protein. Right, I love cooking with a thermometer, man. It's raised my grilling game tremendously. Right, I don't overcook, I don't undercook. It's cooked to temperature, and man, I've my cooking game is just up. So Katie says, hey Greg, how you doing? Welcome to the show. All right, so again, where should we start? You know, I would say definitely we should start with the title of what we're going to attack here, right? The subject, which is, does changing your gear make you faster? Yeah, that's such a good question, isn't it? And of course, I always have interesting answers. And, you know, I think at the end of the day, I think the best question that one could ask themselves is, you know, for what purpose, right? And I would say this goes with everything and anything in life, but even more so when it comes to equipment. For what purpose am I changing the equipment? For what purpose am I going from flat pedals to clip pedals? For what purpose am I going from a Pro XL to a Pro XL Plus frame? Or for what purpose am I going from 165 millimeter cranks to 170 millimeter cranks? For what purpose am I going to increase my gear by one tooth or lower it by one tooth, right? And so I think it's important for you to ask yourself that and find out what the intent is. What's the intent? Because if you're just going to do it just to do it, then it's probably not going to work. So you got to figure out what the intent is in everything and anything you do as it pertains to equipment, any kind of equipment adjustments, or if you're trying to improve in a certain area of the track or you're racing. Does equipment really help? Yes, sometimes it does. Absolutely. Sometimes it doesn't. So I would say in this video, that's what we want to discover. Hey, for what purpose and what advantages will it be for us to either change our gear and make it higher or change our gear and make it lower? All right. So I would say let's start off with the first one, right? I would say the most common one is, you know, if I increase my gear, will I go faster? Yes, absolutely, you'll go faster. Unfortunately, it's only going to be in certain areas of the track. All right. So, and I would say before we even get into that, I would say if you were to ask me, hey, Greg, what's the best gear? What's the best gear that I can run? And here's going to be my number one default answer. Whatever gear you have on right now, that's going to be the best gear for you. All right. And let me explain and let me preface this before we go deep into the philosophy of changing gears. The important thing to understand is that our bodies, they adapt. And once they adapt, it's hard to adapt to something else. Okay. So it adapts from a physiology standpoint. Okay. And the physiology is going to be muscularly and neurologically, okay? Those two things, more importantly, okay? Psychologically, yes, there are some things going on there, and we'll go there in a second. But let's think about what's going on when we adapt to a gear that we are imposed when we pedal, okay? So let's just say, for example, someone like myself who's raced a really long time, if I were to look through all the gears that I've raced throughout my career, I would say probably 4416 is probably the most common gear that I've raced. Okay, so I'm used to racing on that gear, 4416, give or take just a little bit higher, maybe a little bit lower, depends on the situation. Depends if it's pre-clips era or post-clips era, okay? But at the end of the day, muscularly, our muscles are going to adapt to the gear, whatever we're pedaling, okay, in terms of the force, the power, right? The power distribution, which is going to be force and also speed. All right. So neurologically, we're going to be able to recruit automatically with mastery without even thinking. Muscularly, we know exactly how many muscle motor units and fibers we need to recruit to get out of the gate with a 4416, for example. And also neurologically, I'm going to know how fast I need to recruit and discharge that muscle, flex that muscle, and overcome the inertia. Okay. So muscular programming, neurological programming. Kind of both the same, really, but just wanted to give you that idea. At the end of the day, we're programming ourselves, right? And once we adapt, we've adapted to that. Now, here's the problem. When we change a gear, the programming gets confused. Muscularly, if it's a harder gear, it's got to recruit. It's going to feel heavy. It's got to recruit more muscle motor units. Neurologically, it's confused. It doesn't know how fast it needs to basically discharge that muscle. Whatever the muscle recruits, there needs to be a speed of discharge. All right. Now, when you change the gear and lower it, of course, muscularly, it's going to be easier. Neurologically, it needs to go even faster. So it's also confused. So when you ask me, hey, Greg, especially if I had a race, I don't really feel all that great. Should I change my gear? I don't know. What's your warm up like? What was your sleep like? Did you warm up properly this morning? Did you do your warm up sprints? Did you get some plyometrics in? I've been in situations where I've had athletes show up to the world championships and they're just mentally flat, physically flat, emotionally unavailable. And I've had success just by simply saying, hey, you know what? Get your bike, get some tennis shoes. Let's leave the arena. We have an extra 20 minutes. Let's go do our warm up somewhere else. And I'll change the warm up completely. Okay. We're not going to change the gear. We're not going to change our pedals. We're not going to change the handlebar angle. We're not going to change anything equipment wise. I'm going to change their mind, right? I'm going to shift the way they think, shift the way you think, and you'll create change. So what I did was, I'll say who it was. It was Mike Day. I don't know what year, World Championships, and man, when was it? 2009 World Championships in Adelaide in Australia, South Australia. And emotionally unavailable, mentally unavailable, physically, he just felt flat. And I would say that, I don't know what came first. Sometimes physically, I have another athlete. He was always, basically his mental attitude was based upon he felt. Some athletes are really kinesthetic like that. Some athletes, they already have these thoughts, they have these visions, and therefore it kind of trickles down from the thoughts, and then the body just responds from there. Some people are just the opposite. Hey, how does my body feel? Oh, it feels pretty good. Well, you know what? Then my mind's great. Anyway, so what I did was I took Mike and I changed up his warm-up completely. Just did some things differently in terms of our warm-up and the order. And then, of course, integrated a couple different sprints that we normally don't do, and even did a few different plyometrics that we normally don't do. And then we did it away from the track. And then we were able to come back into the arena, and he was able to have this shift in his mindset. And he went on and he got a medal that day. I mean, I think if he would have went, if we didn't do that, we didn't create any change, and I didn't coach him, I think he probably would have been watching the finals. And so, yeah, so that is an easy way. If you're at the race and you're struggling, perhaps you could do something different with your mind, and maybe perhaps you could do something different with your body. Okay. And so that will create change. Now, if you're at the race, you need to change the gear, and it's like, hey, Greg, should I change my gear? Okay. We're back to square one, right? It's like, okay, for what purpose? Because I can tell you there has been a time where I've actually changed the gear and it benefited me and I felt awesome, but it's really rare. And so And there's also been times, probably more times than not, especially, and I think back in my pro days, right? Because I used to race a lot. We raced 30 weekends a year, man. We raced so much, and so many laps over the weekend because we raced 2 classes both days, and we had quarters, and it was just BMX was just booming back then. Anyways, I would, if I was flat, meaning physically I wasn't really feeling it, and I'm like, oh man, there's got to be something I need to do here, and I would change my gear, and I would put on a harder gear, and then I'd go in the gate, and I'd come out of the gate all slow and sluggish, and I'm like, oh man, what's going on? This gear feels really, really heavy. I can't even get on top of it. And of course, then I'm riding around the track, and my bike doesn't feel right. The balance point is off because you put on a bigger gear on the front, it shifts the rear end. It makes it go forward. So the balance point was higher, and I felt kind of out of control picking up on the bike, and the front end was higher, and I felt like I was looping out, so I had to compensate for that. So these are things that we need to think about, right? And we're going to go into this, and I got everything laid out for you guys, pros and cons of going up in gear and pros and cons of going down in gear. And so, again, I've also changed gears, right? Where I've lowered the gear, and it's just like, oh my God, I'm not going anywhere. My reaction has to be faster. I'm not reacting fast enough. I'm pedaling faster. I'm not going anywhere. And so the reason being is because I haven't been able to adapt to it. Right? Because our bodies are used to what we impose. All right. Our bodies are used to what we impose. Maybe you might want to write that down. That being said, there are some advantages of changing gears if you have foresight of where you're going. Like over here in the States, USA BMX likes to have this race in Las Vegas, and it's in a tight rodeo arena, and the track is literally about, 20 seconds. Let me know if I'm lying. It's 20 seconds. It's half the distance of your typical race. The first straight's like 150 feet long in total. It's ridiculous. Your average first straight is double that. It's about 300 feet. Your average track's about, 1,100, 1,200 feet. And that's pretty good. That's pretty long. Looks like we got some guys coming in here, so that's cool. Where was I? Help me remember. Think, Greg, think. Oh yeah, so if you have the foresight to where, you know what, I'm going to Vegas, it's in 2 weeks, then you can start planning and start programming and start adapting to the gear that you're going to use on race weekend. You don't want to change Saturday, the day of the race, okay? Because the body needs to adapt. Everything's going to feel weird. Your timing's going to be weird. Muscularly, it's going to be different. Neurologically, it's going to be different. The balance point's going to be lower or higher. Okay, so you have to think and consider all these things. So it's important that if you have the foresight that you know that you want to run a specific gear at a specific track, then you need to change it in advance. All right, that's rule number 1. Okay. Now let's go ahead and just quickly go over some of these other pros and cons. And I will get to the story about the one race where I actually changed the day of, and oh man, it saved me, and I did really good. All right, so let's go with going up a tooth, shall we? All right, here we go. Hopefully this works. All right, so when it comes to going up a tooth with, going up a harder gear, and I'm just using one tooth as a reference. I mean, there's some of us that could change the back tire, and that changes the gear inches or the rollout, whatever you guys want to call it. That's a whole nother discussion. Sure, you can fine tune with that, and you can also do what we would call back in the day splitting gear. So going from, say, a 44-16 and you want to go a little bit lower, you could probably put a 15 on and maybe go to a 42-15. I'm sorry, that's if you want to go harder than a 44-16. You'd put a 42-15 on, and now guys are going with 49 and I think 49-17. 49-17 is just slightly harder than a 44-16. Let's just stick with let's just presuppose you're going to leave the same rear cog in the back and either go up one or down one, okay? Because that's pretty dramatic, and that's the most common way that people change gears. So here we go. So pros, the pros to changing a gear are you get more top end speed on certain areas of the track, right? So I've always noticed with a harder gear, I feel like I can go faster for the same amount of effort, say like once I get going after a first jump or flying into the turn, especially coming out of turns. I just feel like I got a little bit more meat under my feet, so to speak. Right? I don't feel like I'm spinning out, and I actually feel like I can pedal harder and I'm going faster, as opposed to if I had the normal gear that I was adapted to, going around a turn and pedaling as hard as I can. You know, I would say there was probably a max speed limit on that. But if I had a harder gear, you know, a taller gear, then I felt like I was going faster. And I've done that. Back in the day, we used to run these time trials in the pro class. And so I would actually go with a harder gear for time trials, but it was too much work, man. Like changing your gears, you know, forget it. I can't stand it. But the problem is when you put a header, okay, we'll get to the cons here in a second, but the other pros, of course, is it's less leg speed to go the same speed. Okay, cool. All right, so those are our pros. All right, so the con is with a harder gear, it requires more muscle recruitment to get over the inertia, to get on top of the gear and get on top, to get on top of the gear and get going. It's more inertia that you have to overcome muscularly and neurologically. So you need to be stronger, and the gear is going to be moving slower. So you got to recruit even more muscle motor units than you normally do, and your body's going to be confused, and mentally you're going to be like, oh my gosh, the feedback's going to be like, it's harder. Okay, recruit more. Oh man, am I even strong enough to do this? I mean, this is all happening like within fractions of a second. It's amazing how fast neurologically we can communicate from the brain to the muscle motor units that we're trying to recruit. So again, it's important for you to impose the demand the week prior. We're talking about the day of. If you were to do this, it's going to be a real huge wake up call. So knowing that it requires more muscle motor units, if you're going to go higher, then you need to commit to that gear and stick with it. Do not go back, because if you were to go back, then you would have to readapt to the other gear, which oh man, it could potentially be a mess. All right, so what else did I write here? When you go with a bigger gear in the front, it makes the rear end shorter. Okay, so the rear end needs to move forward. Now, unless you're like some of these guys in the Netherlands where they run they run like a fixed rear axle placement. It's fixed right in place, and then they just run a derailleur. I don't know about that. I mean, yeah, I don't know about running derailleurs. You know, it's more friction, more things can go wrong. For the rest of us that have traditional dropouts, right, and it's adjustable, and you put a bigger gear on, it's going to shorten the rear end. And when you shorten the rear end, the front end's going to come up easier. The balance point is going to be higher. And when the balance point is higher, you're going to have to reconfigure that balance point to be used to feel good about your manuals. And also if you're picking up before jumps, the front end's going to come up easier. Now, that actually might be okay. But if you're used to a certain balance point and you overcompensate and you go with your normal technique on your original setup, and you pull up the same amount and you shift your hips back, that front end is going to come up surprisingly pretty quick, and you're going to be like, whoa, and you're going to have to overcompensate. So from a technical standpoint, it can mess you up. Again, if you're to do this the day of the race, trust me, I've done this before. I've done this in pro motos where it's like, whoa, man, my front end's coming up and I'm getting squirrely. I'm out of control. So you have to think about these things. All right. Are we good on the pros and cons of going up a tooth? Cool. Very cool. Looks like we have a couple questions coming in. I'm just going to holler out some names. John Gondini. Eric Thurston, please forgive me if I mispronounce your name. Caden Bailey, cool. Thank you guys so much for joining. I know there's going to be a smaller crowd today because, well, it's like Labor Day weekend. All right, let's go to going down a tooth. Okay. Sometimes I feel like going down a tooth is going to be easier than going up. If you guys have your hands raised up with me, leave a comment below. The pros of going down, it feels easier, right? It just feels easier. And when it's easier, of course, that's always nice, right? And then, of course, let's see, what else did I write here? I can't even read my writing. Well, the screen's really small. More higher end leg speed required to go the same speed. So actually, that's actually a con. I don't know why I put that under pros. But yeah, at the end of the day, there's not many pros when it comes to changing your gear. You're starting to see this trend. There's actually more cons as opposed to pros when it comes to changing your gear. So yeah, the pros are, there's only one really when you make your gear easier. It feels easier. Now, when it feels easier, does it mean that you're going faster? Well, not necessarily, unless, again, we've imposed a demand and your body has adapted, right? If it's adapted, because keep in mind, if you were to change your gear and go easier, listen, coming out of the gate, you have to react faster, and your speed, your rate of speed, your rate of speed of discharge has to be even faster. It has to be, bam, you have to get on top of the gear even faster, right? So less torque, but more speed, more karate chop, bam. Okay, so you have to think about that. Everything needs to move faster. You have to react faster. Legs got to move faster when you lower the gear. And I've had that wake up call, right? Well, I was saying earlier, I've showed up to races where, I'm a kinesthetic type of guy. I learned that throughout my career. I would pretty much base how I was going to race on how I felt. And I don't think that's always a good way to go about it. I think it really, it comes down to how are you thinking resourcefully between the ears. That's where it matters most. And when I started thinking that way, my results would be freaking awesome. My body would respond. The body's amazing. It'll respond to what the mind wants, and whatever that intent is, it's going to get it. So again, when you make the gear easier, you have to react faster. Everything needs to move faster. You have to pedal faster. Again, is your body programmed, and is it adapted to do that? And it might take you a few sprints. It might take you a few gates to get used to that. All right. So I would say, that's a con, right? Like you have to move faster. Have you been moving faster? No, you're used to the gear before. Okay. What else did I write here? It also changes it also changes the balance point, right? When you put on an easier gear, a smaller gear in the front, it lengthens the rear end. The balance point's going to be a little bit lower. So it's going to require for you to shift your hips back even further to get the balance point to where you're used to in terms of your manualing, also picking up for jumps. If you're an older guy, if you're picking up for jumps, you understand what that means. If you're like 10 and under and you're a beginner, intermediate, listen, I would say at the end of the day, this is probably, none of this stuff really is, I would say this is more dramatic for the more advanced rider. Okay. I probably should have said this in the beginning, but I would say, if you're 12 and under, you're just getting used to the sport. You're just getting involved in the sport, and you're just learning your basic skills. Going up, going down is not going to be a big deal. At some point, most BMX bikes, they seem to come in pretty low in gearing. So there's nothing wrong with you changing the gear and bumping it up from time to time. I don't think it's going to be more beneficial. Now, from a beginner standpoint, I like an easy gear because it teaches the kid how to spin. But at the same time, if you put a taller gear on, just raise it up a tooth, it's going to smooth everything out for him as well. And if his pedal stroke can be a little bit smoother and he's going a little bit faster, he might have more energy to navigate the track and enjoy the skills, right? If you have more energy, you can navigate the track a little easier. There's less fatigue. If I start mixing up my words, I got to drink water. I got a backup one here too. All right, so I hope you guys are starting to understand this a little bit more. Eating and drinking on the show here. Yeah, so at the end of the day, when it comes to pros, I would say a lot of this is kinesthetic. Let's speak on behalf of the more advanced riders, some of the intermediates that are riding and racing and training and sprinting a lot. If you're going to change the gear, do it in advance. Okay? We're talking about making gear changes the day of. Now, if we're doing this for a longer development, a longer progression of your speed, let's say you're getting stronger, let's say you're getting older and it's time for you to, go up in crank length, then yes, you need to compensate and bring your gear up. Okay? Now, if you guys were to sit here and ask me, let me change this. If you guys were to ask me, hey Greg, listen, if I change my gear, if you were to ask me the most common question that I always get asked, hey, what gear should I run? I'm gonna hit you with the whatever gear you have on right now, just based upon adaptations, right? And then the next thing I always say, from a philosophical standpoint, okay, and this is something that I thought of when I was racing, right, especially in my pro days, what's the most common gear in the class that everyone's running, okay? Can I run that gear, and how do I go with that gear compared to everyone else? Am I able to execute the skills from the top, right, from, getting out of the gate with a good reaction time and getting on top of the gear, getting in front of the competition, and then staying on top of the gear with good leg speed. Because once I get out of the gate, I got to stay in front of them. If I have an easier gear, sure, I could react fast because I just have that skill. I can react fast and beat someone out. But I've also had it to where my gear was so easy, the guy that I beat out, he's just reeling me in and he's pedaling right through my elbow. Steve Veltman did that to me one time. What year was that? I don't know, a long time ago, right? Long time ago in the 2000s. And so now, if I could get out with him using the same gear as him, okay, then I would say I would have a better chance of preserving and sustaining whatever lead I get over him if I get out of the gate and beat him out of the gate. Now, there was a pro. Some of you guys may know who he is. Some of you guys may not. There was a pro that I used to race. His name was Christophe Levesque. All right, he's won every single pro title. Christophe, he ran a 44-16 everywhere. I mean, he made that like known to everybody. He didn't care. It's like, listen, I'm running 44-16 everywhere. I'm not changing my gear. I don't care if the track is outdoor Orlando where, there's 10 starting lanes in the gate, but there actually used to be, but it would be an 8-man gate, but wide starting gate, big, fast starting hill, long last straight. I'm talking long, man. I'm talking like NFL football long, just pedaling for days. 44-16 everywhere. If we were indoors, if it was the ABA Grands, Rodeo Arena, 44-16. All right. That was helpful for me to actually understand that because I would try to run a 44-16 and see where I stood with him. And then I would work on my training. If I didn't feel like that worked, then I would start messing with my gears. And actually I did. I actually decided, you know what, my setup is I'm going to run it one tooth higher than him. I'm going to get strong and commit to that gear and get strong enough to be even with him out of the gate with that 45. If I could be even with him out of the gate with that 45, then I can sure as heck beat him. I would say the reason why, for what purpose, right? You would ask me, hey Greg, for what purpose are you going higher with the gear against your comp? Well, I always felt like I had a lot of explosion out of the gate, but I didn't have that long pull speed endurance that Christoph had down the last straight. And that's where he was just rolling the competition up. I would get out in front of him, but he would just roll me up like carpet, man. He would roll and steamroll right by me on that last straight every time. So I had to work on that. I put on a bigger gear, started working on my strength, started working on my mind, and visualized myself out pedaling him down the last straight. And that worked out. And from a psychological standpoint, that gave me a lot of confidence because I knew that I had a taller gear than him and I could run with him around the track. I knew he had to pedal faster and I didn't have to pedal as fast as him. And so I knew that I could battle with him. We had lots of good battles, man. He was one of my favorite guys to race, Christoph Levesque. So I would say the best gear is the one you have. And if you're looking to make a long-term change, it's always good to find out what the average gear is in the class. Just ask the rider, hey, what gear are you running? He'll tell you. Ask the parents. If you're a parent, ask the other parent. They'll tell you. It's not that big of a deal. And then try out that gear, right? Try out that gear. See how the rider responds. And then start training from there, right? Is the rider doing sprints? Are they doing any strength training, right? Are they doing any speed training? That's how I would go about gears. There is no magical gear. So if you're to ask me, hey Greg, what's the best gear? I don't know. The one that you got, man. The one that's on there right now, because it's gonna be based upon the number one principle, the presupposition of changing gears. It's gonna be the one that you're on right now is the best one that you have because your body has adapted to it. All right, from a muscular and neurological standpoint. I hope that makes sense, guys. I hope that makes sense. All right. That was kind of a big rant on gears there, huh? I tell you what. Let me take a break. We'll go to the questions here in a second. Hey guys, I have a question. What would it do for you if you could enhance your power out of the gate, enhance your sprint speed down the first straight, enhance your skills, enhance your mental performance mind state? What would that do for your racing or your kids' racing? If you're seeing the value of enhancing your BMX performance, consider joining the community of BMX Training Pro and get the same access my Olympic athletes have enjoyed, as well as thousands of BMXers all over the world. Some members use the access to improve their gate start techniques. Some also use the access to keep them motivated to train, and you'll find your reason when you gain access and join BMX Training Pro today.
Stay focused, get ready now. For real, get ready now.
Nitro with the nice flow.
Stay focused, get ready now. For real, get ready now. Let's go. Stay focused, hear the heat come. Concentrate to the sound of the beat drum. Yeah. Start it up, take it back now. Check it out. This is how it's going down. Yeah.
All right, we're back. I scanned some of these questions. Hey, listen, 6:09. I said I would end this stream by 6:15. I'm going to give you guys till 6:20. There are a couple questions, and I like how we're kind of keeping it relevant to gearing. And I would say most of these questions, I'm going to keep it as it pertains to gearing. Any other questions, I'll probably answer those questions maybe manually after the show, after we publish it to the channel, or I'll take these questions and I'll answer them next week. And I know Johnny Vance, you asked me a great question last week. I'll answer that next week. But let's keep it relevant to gearing. So we have a first one, Katie. Katie says, "Hey Greg, you're doing good work. My kids are loving your show, and I'm looking forward to the gear questions. Lower gear on a bigger hill, higher gear on a smaller hill? Question mark." Listen, I would say at the end of the day, if you change the gear, okay, you change the gear. If it's a lower, okay, so I don't even know where to start because my brain's just going all over the place. I just want to jump all over it. Katie, listen, I would say keep the gear on. Whatever gear they have on, let's train the athlete and prepare for whatever hill it is. If it's a flat hill, let's prepare them with flat sprints, right? Literally keep the ground flat. All right. If it's a steeper hill, let's do some sprints with a steeper hill. And, mimic a gate start. So meaning, have it be a stand start. A stand start means they're at a standstill and they just sprint down the hill. All right. So that way we're imposing the demand of a steeper hill, which is going to require more leg speed. Okay. And that way, when we show up to that race or that track, we're ready because we have adapted, right? The law of adaptation is huge. Great question, Katie. Eric Thurison, thanks for providing great value here. Hey, thank you for showing up. I really appreciate you, Eric. Caden, how do we get our mindset right? Give me more context. We'll address that next week. I love the mindset. Here, Eric says, does the 38 deliver better torque than a 42? I don't know. Again, hopefully everything that I've said up to that, you're starting to understand. Maybe and not necessarily at the same time. What about running a thicker tire on the rear? Benji BMX 274 ask. What about running a thicker tire on the rear? What's a thicker tire going to do? Are you talking thicker in terms of width or height? If it's height, then it's going to make the gear easier, right? And now we know what happens when we make a gear easier. The good news is if we were to change the tire, our wheelbase doesn't move, so our balance point and our skills are not so much compromised. However, a taller tire will raise the bottom bracket up. And when the bottom bracket comes up, then the bike is going to go side to side a little bit when you're coming out of the gate. Bet you didn't think of that one. And lastly, if we go with a thicker tire and make it taller, again, in an effort to make the gear easier, then you're creating more inertia that you have to overcome. Okay, so you're making the gear easier, but then again, you have to overcome more inertia. So it's kind of like a wash. You're better off riding with the setup that you showed up with. Run what you brung. I think that's the message here, right? Run what you brung, man. All right. Let's see. Devin Kelly, when do you recommend a younger rider should have clips? Devin, I think Devin, did you go on a couple other posts and said, I don't know, you left some messages and other videos where you're like, man, I need clips. And then you said it in another video. Man, why do you think you need clips, man? You tell me. We'll answer that next week. Johnny Vance, my man. What are some tactics you would use to differentiate between a rider running too hard of a gear and a rider needs great leg strength? And a rider who needs great leg strength. What are some tactics you would use to differentiate it between a rider running too hard of a gear and a rider who needs great leg strength? Are you asking if a rider needs more strength and he's running too hard of a gear at the same time? I'm not sure. Man, I wish there were some tone. See, that's the problem with communication, Johnny. Words are only 7%. Tone's 38 and body language is 55. BMX F1. What up, G? What's going on, BMX F1? How you doing? Johnny, give me more context, man. Eric Thurston says, currently on a 42 stock, thinking 38 would be better. 42 to 38, that's like 4 teeth. Again, the pros and cons that we talked about were 1 tooth differences. You're talking about going 4? Are you going to change the rear cog as well, Eric? BB Boys ask, does the crank length change the gearing, and is it important to have the right crank length in the intermediate class? I think it's important to have the right crank length in any class, first and foremost. Man, my mind goes crazy when I think of crank length. We haven't even gone there. Yes. At the end of the day, yes and no. In terms of crank length changing the gearing. From a kinesthetic standpoint, Absolutely, right? If I was running 180s, okay, 4416, okay, all is equal, 4416. I think recently I was running 177 and a halves, 180s. I've ran 170, I've ran 175s, 177 and a halves, 180s, 182 with a 4416. And from a kinesthetic standpoint, yes, it does make the gear feel different. But technically speaking, in terms of actual rollout, right? Like one full crank revolution with a 4416 for even numbers, just for even sake, it's a 15-foot rollout, right? So if you were to take the bike, have the cranks even at 3 and 9 o'clock, chalk the line off, do one full crank revolution and the bike rolls forward, one full revolution, have the crank stop at, again, 3 and 9 o'clock, it's roughly going to be 15 feet, regardless if the cranks are 150 or 250 millimeters. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Now, with cranks, leverage is the thing. With a longer crank, that gear is going to feel easier. You're still going the same distance per revolution. Okay, but it's going to feel easier with longer cranks. It's going to feel harder with shorter cranks. Shorter cranks requires more torque. Longer cranks requires more rate of speed of discharge. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. We can go crank length. That's a whole nother topic. But generally speaking, yeah, I would say it's important for every rider to run the most comfortable crank that they can get out of the gate with, and also spin and accelerate down the first straight, as well as ensuring that the cranks are not too long. I would say after the first turn, because you're just going to feel like you're chopping wood, right, all the way to the finish line. Your cranks need to be something that can complement you from the gate all the way to the finish line. So for me, it's weird. If I'm running 182s, I need to run a 45, right? If I'm running 177 and a halves, which is a 5 millimeter difference lower, then a 4416 is going to feel even better for me. Crank lengths is a whole nother topic. All right, what other questions do we have? Great question, though. John Gondini, is having point gear better than going up a tooth like 45.6 to 46? Okay, so decimal gearing. You're talking about decimal gearing. I like decimal gearing. I'm a big fan of it. It's an easy way for you to fine tune without creating too much change in terms of like bottom bracket height through tire changes and of course, moving the dropouts forward and backwards and changing the balance point. I do like decimal gearings because it does make it a lot subtler and it allows me to fine tune a little bit more. I think at the Worlds I was running 177 and a halves with, I think it was a 44.1, just slightly higher than a 44. Yeah, I like decimal gears. I don't know if that answered your question. Olivia says, "Hey, I just went to the Rock Hill Nationals. I just want to rock." She says, "Hey, I just went to the Rock Hill Nationals this weekend and I crashed on Saturday, so I was nervous for my other races. Is there any specific way to get over nerves after crashing?" Yes, absolutely. It's a hard one, right? You're going to have to recreate, you're going to have to regain your confidence, right? So I can help you with that. Just, email me, info@bmxtraining.com, and perhaps we can have a discussion about getting over any potential fears or nerves or anxiety that you have about crashing, right? Because what happens is basically when, I'm answering questions as, we're supposed to stay with gearing, right? But when it comes to crashing, certainly the problem is when we label it and make it mean something. So if we really make something, if we make something mean something, to the point where it's just like, oh, wow, man, like, I don't ever want to do that again, then what's going to happen is if you start to get in that same situation, the unconscious mind's just going to take over, and they're going to say, hey, what did we do last time? We crashed. Okay, so if we're going to crash, then we need to put on a turtle shell and basically, get in fight or flight mode and protect ourselves, and we're going to back off. And so that's the problem with having a bad crash and then labeling it, making it mean something, as opposed to, not making it mean anything. Hey, you know what? No big deal. I'm just going to get up and keep pushing through. Some people have it like that. Some people don't. I've had, as a top pro, I've had gnarly wrecks, especially at the supercross level, where I was like, dude, why am I doing this? This is retarded. Crashing over a 45-foot double. And yeah, it's gnarly, man. It's a big wake-up call. Connor Nyland, I was wondering if you had any recommendations on a good set of clips. What, like a brand? Let me know what you mean by that. Johnny says, basically, I'm asking, when do you say the gear is too hard versus when do you say the rider needs to be stronger? Yeah, so like, let's just say that, I've never really ran in that situation, ran into a situation with a rider where it's like, hey, you know what? You're not strong enough, lower the gear. Now, if it's a newer rider and the gear's too hard, then by all means, let's lower the gear. Make it easier for him, right? Just make it easier for him. Rarely are you going to be an expert or a pro. Well, maybe perhaps, we could think of really, really big extremes. There was this guy named David Milham who historically ran hard gears, mind-blowing hard. We're talking like 45-14. I kid you not. Look him up. He used to ride for GT. He was actually a past ABA. Today it's known as USA BMX, but back then, before the Olympics, it was known as the ABA. And he was an ABA national #1 amateur, and he won in a rodeo arena riding a 45-14. Then he turned pro, and he did okay, right? He did really well on the outdoor tracks, but I think at some point there's only so much strength that a guy like this could develop to get on top of the 45-14 compared to a guy like Gary Ellis or a Christophe Levesque who's running, a 44-16, right? I mean, we're talking like 5 teeth higher than everyone else. He's going to have to lower the gear, straight up. He's going to have to get it within a wheelhouse that's going to make him competitive in terms of getting out of the gate. I would say, now if you're a rider, you're traditionally you like harder gears, and you're having a hard time getting out of the gate, then yes, you're going to need to reconsider your gearing and perhaps lower it, get used to it, maybe do some speed work and adapt to it, do some sprint work, plyometric work, adapt and overcome and try to try to be within the same wheelhouse as the competition. Now, yes, I would say both, right? Lower the gear and do some training, right? That's being pro. It's funny, man. Like when I was an amateur, I would say traditionally everyone was running like 45-16, 40, or a lot of guys running 46-16 with 185s, okay? But it seemed like the pro class, everyone was running 44s. And I think at the end of the day, the reason being was it was all about getting the snap and getting the elbow out in front of the competition. It was all about getting the hole shot because racing was so tight. If you can get the hole shot, it was really, really hard to pass somebody. It didn't matter if the guy behind you was running a bigger gear. At the end of the day, the guy in second has to worry about the guy in third. As much as he's trying to make a pass, on the guy in first, there's so much stuff going on in the back of the pack. All right, what other gearing questions do we have? It's 6:25. Listen, guys, I really appreciate all these questions coming in. Any questions that I didn't get, please forgive me. I will answer them when we publish the video after the live feed. And I will also take some of these questions and we'll push them back into next week's live show at 5:30 Mondays, Pacific Standard Time. I'm getting hungry. I could use some food. Yeah, we're starting to get some gear questions. Oh, the Russian potato, man. Thanks for showing up. What gear would you recommend for a 15 novice? The gear that you have on. See what I did? How do you retime your starts for a slower gait? That's a great question. I love that. All right, guys. Well, hey, as it pertains to gearing, going up, going down, training with a harder gear, listen, if the gear that you have on is the best gear, if you're getting faster and stronger, then reconsider changing your gear and making sure that you have enough time to adapt. Oh, you know what? I did want to share the one story about the time that I went down a tooth and I actually did really well. I won. I remember showing up to this race. It was in all places. It was a USA BMX race. I think it was like 1999, 1998. I remember it was like Valentine's Day weekend. I swear, man, the starting hill was this tall. It wasn't that tall, but you know what I mean? It was like literally 3 feet tall. It was in a rodeo arena. Now, the cool thing was there wasn't many jumps down the first straight. There was like maybe 2, and there was plenty of room to pedal. And I remember showing up on Friday in practice. I had a 44-16 on, and I was just getting smoked out of the gate. I couldn't respond. I come out of the gate, and then it was like coming out of the gate, and then boom, straight to flat ground. Gate to flat ground, and it just felt like, oh man, I can't get going here. And I had a really frustrating practice. And I remember right after practice, what I did was I went to the car, went to my gear bag, looked for the 43, and I put the 43 on, took the 44 off, put the 43 on, and I said, screw it. What do I have to lose? I didn't feel all that great. I remember in the morning, I did a few sprints with it, and I remember getting into the gate, and I just went for it. I just tried to react as fast as I could, try to hit the gate, because I knew that if I tried to hit the gate, that was my mind shift to adapt to an easier gear, by the way, in an effort to react faster. Again, if we lower the gear, everything has to what? Move faster. You have to react faster. You have to pedal faster, right? Muscularly, neurologically, we have to adapt. So we have to mentally impose that demand, be deliberate. And so I was deliberately trying to hit the gate just in an effort to respond and react with a faster gear and get on top of it. The 43 felt awesome, by the way. I don't think I lost a lap. I think I won like all 3 races. It was really cool. Won a lot of money, and that was like the only time I can ever recall where I actually lowered my gearing and I did really well. All right, so it can happen. It depends on the context. It was like the original question that Katie up here asked. She said, gearing questions: lower gear on a bigger hill, higher gear on a smaller hill. Well, you would want probably a lower gear on the smaller gear. You would want a lower gear on a smaller hill and the bigger gear on the bigger hill. But that doesn't really matter. I would say the best gear is going to be the one that you showed up with, because you're going to have to adapt to that new gear unless you have the ability to adapt to the gear from a mindset of just like, you know what? The starting hill's way too flat. We're in Vegas. I need to drop down now. Everyone else already dropped down. Find out if anyone else is changing their gear. Is anyone else changing the gear? Probably not. It's interesting. I get this a lot, and when the Olympic racing started happening in 2007 on these big, I'm sorry, it happened before that, because I actually raced in UCI Supercross style starting hills back in 2005, right, which was my last year. I actually retired. In 2006, I retired as an elite. Anyways, bigger hill, we were thinking, oh yeah, you know what? Maybe we put a bigger gear on. Well, if no one else is changing their gear, I'm not going to change my gear, because everyone else is going to be able to react really fast and powerfully. Again, BMX is all about speed kills. It's all about reacting fast with power. So don't make a mess of it and just change your gear just for the sake of changing your gear. Don't change your gear out of insecurity. If you need to change, if you're not feeling it, then go change your warm up. Go change your mind. All right. That's where you can create change. All right, guys. With that said, I'm going to end it with that. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity for you guys to sit here and listen with me this evening. I'm grateful for the opportunity. Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them. I'll bleed them into the next live chat next week, Monday, 5:30. Make sure you guys share this. Again, we're trying to help out as many beginners and newer riders and parents as possible. And of course, the older guys that are newer to our sport. And of course, newly turned pros like Johnny Vance here, who's asking questions. So again, thank you so much. Make sure you go to bmxtraining.com, check out the membership, and I'll see you guys next week. Hey guys, I have a question. What would it do for you if you could enhance your power out of the gate, enhance your sprint speed down the first straight, enhance your skills, enhance your mental performance mind state? What would that do for your racing or your kids' racing? If you're seeing the value of enhancing your BMX performance, consider joining the community of BMX Training Pro and get the same access my Olympic athletes have enjoyed, as well as thousands of BMXers all over the world. Some members use the access to improve their gate start techniques. Some also use the access to keep them motivated to train, and you'll find